Well, the word for tonight is pressure. College nights under pressure. Everybody get a stress ball that needs one? Anybody need a stress ball that didn't get one? All right, we'll try to find one for you. All right, just show of hands, as we're talking about pressure tonight. Anybody would say, like, I'm feeling the pressure mid-semester and I'm feeling it, I'm approaching my grad. Anybody here tonight and you're like, not me, I'm totally chill, I just don't feel. All right, we despise you. Okay, a couple people. I'm kidding. We're so glad you're here. Hey, so we're talking about pressure, and you know this, but this season of college especially brings a lot of pressure, and so much so that I felt it appropriate to talk about the topic tonight. And so I brought a list, just started thinking through some of the pressures that I hear you talking about, some of the things you deal with. Things like the pressure of finding your first job. Anybody dealing with this right now? You're about to graduate, it's first job, and it's like, I need any job, but ideally this would be a job, that relates to my major, otherwise everybody's gonna judge me. My parents are, what did we pay all that money for, right? And you got a couple natties out of college, but that's about it. But we're trying to, you gotta find the first job. There's a lot of pressure with that. There's, related to that would be just the pressure of like, what do I wanna do? And if you're a Christian, then it's also like, what does like God want me to do? And I asked somebody recently, or some students, I said, when did you feel pressure for the first time? And they said, well, it was in the 4th grade that they asked us to decide what we want to do for a living. Because all of our middle school classes, we're gonna have to pick according to what we were trying to be when we grow up. And if you're not taking college classes when you're in high school, you're behind. There's a little bit of pressure there. Related to that, there's academic pressure. I read recently that the United States has the 3rd most difficult public school system in the world. So congratulations for being born into that as well. There's the pressure to find my person. Anybody feeling that pressure right now? Come to college, gotta find my person. Maybe that's why you're college nights. I don't know, no judgment. But then once you find that hit home. Okay, that hit a little too close to home. Need to do another mixer. So there's the pressure to find your person, but there's also once you find them, there's the pressure to keep your person, which sounds weird, like they're your pet, but they're not really your pet, you know what I mean? But you're like, please don't leave me because I finally found you and I think you're wonderful. And so there's like that pressure. There's maybe a lot of us feel this, the pressure to be a good Christian, but also not too good, because that's a little weird too, you know what I'm talking about? And so there's that pressure like during the week, all the academic stuff, but now I got pressure on the weekend because people are sort of judging me and how I'm acting. There's a pressure to be busy. I don't know why I feel that way. Do you feel that? There's just pressure to be busy. Why are we so busy? I don't know. He's busy, she's busy, so I need to just be busy, because if I'm not busy enough, then I'm not doing it right. There's the busyness or the pressure rather of materialism. So you come to college and learn about all these new things. Like I just learned what hokas are. Like would y'all think I was cooler if I got some hokas? You would. I don't even know if they make hokas for you. Somebody said, yeah, like you would think I was cooler. So I'm gonna leave here tonight and get hokas. So in April, y'all will think that I'm cooler than I really am, And so you come to college and you're like, you hate Lululemon. You're from South Georgia, you love lemons, just regular, not Lululemon, but you come to Athens and now there's this pressure to materially fit in because there's a pressure of your brand, whatever that means, but that's a real pressure. There's the pressure to do it right. To do college right, according to who? We don't even know, but they just say that college is supposed to be the best 4 years of your life. But oh, by the way, here's a pandemic, good luck. College has to be picture perfect. There's that pressure. There's the pressure of, how about this, of pleasing your parents versus like your own autonomy and the things that you want to do. So your parents are like sort of, funding your school. So there's that tension, but like, what they would call success and what you would call success are very different, right? And if you did, what they wanted you to do for a living or for a job, or even maybe dated the type of person they wish you would date, you would be totally miserable. But that's a real tension, the pressure between those things. There's the pressure of comparison. So I asked somebody else, when did you feel pressure for the first time? They said, well, my sister was born when I was 5, so probably around 5 years old was when I started feeling the pressure. There's the financial pressure, to which maybe you're like, I don't have financial pressure, I got a credit card, so I'm good. That's another talk, that's a joke, by the way. It's a money joke, so don't get a credit card. No, there's financial pressure there that, we find ways to sort of dodge it or escape it. And if you are like most college students I know, your brain is kind of like an internet browser with all of those little tabs open at the same time. Anybody know what I'm talking about? And all of those tabs with all of those pressure just sort of stay open as you deal with the pressures of life and try to get good grades and fit in and do all that. And then we're not even talking about all the other stuff, all the other pressures that you deal with, right? Things like you're growing up in this era of school shootings, and we read about climate change and friends who are battling suicide, sometimes as early as the 6th grade. It's no surprise then that Gen Z has officially won the award, I read it the other day, for most stressed out generation in America. Congratulations, you're all gonna get a medal on the way out. No, but that's real. Like you have officially, all the data says of all the age groups, you guys, for whatever reason, as we'll dive into some of them, are the most kind of chronically stressed out, carrying the pressure. There was an article in Newsweek that talked about, they called it milestone anxiety. See if you're tracking with this. So there's all these milestones that are coming in your life, things that honestly aren't even here yet. Things like getting married and having kids and buying a house. And you already in your mind have these milestones that are set up that if I don't hit those milestones by a certain age group or a certain age, that somehow I'm behind. You know what I'm talking about? Like that's a unique pressure that a college student feels. They said ultimately 91% of Gen Z respondents reported at least one physical or emotional symptom a month due to stress. And these were some of the symptoms: loss of sleep, overeating or eating junk food, sadness or depression, lack of motivation or energy, anxiety/nervousness, 91%. So my question is this: who are the other 9%? And if you are here tonight, are you willing to come to kind of teach this message? Because I feel like all of us deal with loss of sleep, overeating, eating junk food, sadness and depression, lack of motivation or energy, anxiety or nervousness. So where does all of this pressure come from? It was a fascinating book I read called The Burnout Society. Love that title. In fact, the Sunday mornings right after Easter at church, we're going to do an entire series called The Burnout Society, not based off the book because we thought the title was cool. We're going to steal the title. But in that book, which you do not need to go read because it's not necessarily a Christian book and it's really kind of heady and scientific, there's some pretty interesting stuff, and you don't need to buy it because I'm going to summarize it for you. But in this book and all the research about kind of burnout and stress and anxiety and pressure, they said you can trace the moment that depression began to rise in the world. And in their language, it was when depression began its ascent, when we transitioned to what they called an achievement society. Achievement society. So for them, they said it was the difference between should and can. So for most of the world, it was kind of like, here's what you should do. And it used to be that your future was decided for you. So most all of us would just do the same job that our parents did and keep the family business going. And for most of the world's history, most marriages were arranged. I'll tell you this, my next door neighbors right now, literally at our house, our neighborhood 3 miles from here, our next door neighbors are an arranged marriage. They're fantastic. I'll tell you what, you know who doesn't have any anxiety about finding the person they're gonna marry someday? People in an arranged marriage. Like, I guess we're doing this thing. It's you and me. That's like sort of their vibe. And they're fantastic and honestly have some of the best Indian food I've ever had in my life. I love it. And it's fantastic. They're great. And I'm like, please invite me over more. But they don't have the anxiety about finding their person like you do. And for much of the history of the world, it was just, here's what you should do. We decided you should marry this person. We decided you should have this career and you should stay at home and do this, whatever. But at some point along the way, the world shifted to what they called an achievement society. And the problem is not bad necessarily, but the problem is there's no rest in an achievement society. And the author makes the case that when we are overwhelmed, we are not actually overwhelmed with negativity. Okay, think about this. He's making the case we are actually overwhelmed by positivity, not happiness, but by positivity, he means possibility. We are overwhelmed by possibilities. In other words, I can be this for a living, or I could be this for a living. Or I could date them, or I could date them, or I could, live over there, or I could live over here. And so you have to spend your life figuring out. Ever since you were 5 years old, people have been asking you, what are you gonna be when you grow up? And you're like, apparently I'm gonna be depressed when I grow up because I'm supposed to be watching Paw Patrol, and you're trying to ask me what I'm supposed to be doing with my life, you know what I mean? But that's the generation that you grew up in. You've been asked that question for 15 years already, and then how do you sort through all the options? And so the surprising truth is this, that anxiety comes from too many options, not a lack of them. Anxiety comes from like a surplus of options, not a lack of them. Nobody's sitting around going, man, I'm so anxious, I just got nothing going on, man. I got just nothing to figure out or nothing to decide or no plans or whatever. That's not where anxiety comes from. You have to sift through all the options and make the best possible choice for you all the time. And so you go through a breakup and somebody tells you, it's okay, there's a million fish in the sea. And you're like, I know, that's the problem. Or you're graduating and they're like, what are you gonna do, man? You could go work anywhere in the world. There's Gen Z, this is 2023, you can go work anywhere. And you're like, yeah, but I don't even know how to get to the east side without using Google Maps. Like, I don't wanna go to like Seattle or whatever. There's too much to sort of sift through. There is now a right and a requirement for you to choose your own life. And that's paralyzing. One of the researchers they talked about was this psychologist named Eric Erickson. This is what he said. He said, the patient of today suffers most under the problem of what he should believe and who he should or might be or become with all these different options and all these things. I could be this, or I could be this, or I could be this. While the patient of early psychoanalysis back in the day suffered most under the inhibitions, which prevented him from being what and who he thought he knew he was. So I had all these limits. I could never really go do that. But now the world is your oyster and you can be whatever you want to be. And it's totally stressful. Ultimately, the weight and the pressure comes from this, what the author calls the burden of life without a fixed destiny. This is the pressure you're feeling. The burden of life without like a fixed destiny. And this is weird to think about because this is the only life you've ever known, but this is relatively new in human history. And you didn't choose this. This was just the system you inherited where you have to be the entrepreneur of you. And that's confusing. I was talking to a college student again recently the other day, and they said, for all of life, I always knew what the next step was. So after elementary school, I went to middle school. After middle school, I went to high school to college. And they said, what's weird about college is for the first time in my life, I don't know what the next step is. And simply taking care of yourself is hard, figuring out your future. But now, thanks to social media, and we'll dive into a whole talk on this coming up after Easter on Sunday mornings around here. But now, thanks to social media, you're also in this comparison game that you never signed up for. You were just sort of born into that too. And you can sort of maybe opt out of it, and you've tried, but there's still the comparison thing happening, right? And that's just with your peers. Not to mention pleasing your parents. Not to mention satisfying that thing inside of you that ultimately just wants your life to matter and your life to count. And so, here's what has happened in summary. Our fear of underperforming has actually made us overwhelmed. Your fear, my fear of underperforming is actually the thing that's weighing us down. It's actually what's got us overwhelmed. Can anybody relate to that? Now, here's what I know about you. You actually have ambition. You do. You were born with a lot of it. You had a ton of it in high school and middle school. You're really smart. You care. You probably care more than your parents do. But you're paralyzed by all the possibilities and the potential and the burden of life without a fixed destiny. Now, that's really depressing. Aren't you glad you came to church tonight for this incredibly encouraging message? Now, what I want to do with our final little bit of time tonight as one of your pastors and somebody who cares about you and loves you, I want to try to dump, because that's real. Everything we talk about is real. That is your real life and the situation you were born into. I want to try to dump as much sort of hope and life and lightness. I want to kind of ease as much of the burden as I can. Because here's what's true, and I believe this is true with all my heart. You do have a destiny, and you don't have to wear the weight of it. I believe that with all my heart. You have a destiny from God, and you don't have to wear the weight of it. So tonight, we're going to draw our encouragement and our wisdom from the scriptures. This is we're going to dive shortly into Matthew chapter 6 in the scriptures. And it's a teaching that Jesus did about worry and about people who are worried about the world, people who are worried about the future, people who are worried that the world didn't seem very safe. A lot of us can relate to that. And honestly, they were worried about whether they were going to have enough or not. And right before the part that we're about to read, he's talking to them about money. So tonight's not at all a sermon about money, but he had just done a teaching for them about money, and his ultimate point was this: don't put your hope in money, because if you put your hope in money, then you're gonna have to worry a lot. You have to worry about losing it. You have to worry about somebody stealing it. You have to worry about it losing its value. And his point is this. His point is, don't put your hope in anything you're gonna have to worry about. Does that make sense? Don't put your hope in anything that you're going to have to worry about that could let you down or leave you or anything like that. And I'll tell you what, it's possible. It is possible that some of the anxiety or some of the pressure that you feel tonight is because you have allowed some of your hope to be put in something or someone that ultimately might not come through for you. Right? You have allowed some of your hope to be put in somebody or something or some outcome or some decision or something, maybe in yourself, that might not ultimately come through for you. And so Jesus is going to help us with this. And so this is Matthew chapter 6. If you brought your Bibles, which I hope you always do, open up to Matthew chapter 6. We're going to pick it up in verse 25. If you don't have a Bible, we'll put it right here on the screen. But Jesus says, therefore, Because of all that we talked about, not putting our hope in things that are going to let us down, do not worry about your life, what you will eat or drink, or about your body, or what you will wear, which on one hand is pretty cool that the kind of religion we're talking about is a do not worry type of religion. There's a certain Bob Marley vibe to this. Jesus is like, don't worry, he probably didn't say it quite like that, but he's going like, don't worry. That's pretty cool that I don't know what you thought church was like, or maybe you're new to all this and you're like, what is it gonna be? I mean, the leader of our faith, our Lord and Savior Jesus is going, honestly, man, like, don't worry. Like, that's pretty awesome that's the kind of message tonight is don't worry. But on the other hand, you're like, but that's not very practical, Jesus. I mean, you're telling me not to like worry about my relationships, but I mean, Jesus, hadn't you heard like ring by spring? You know what I'm talking about? Like, it's like a thing, right? And it's like, we're in this relationship, and if he doesn't do the thing by spring, then like my life is over. And so, and Jesus is like, what verse was that again? I don't remember the ring by spring. But that's, we're like, it's not practical not to worry. And Jesus, you're telling me not to worry, like, but I got to get like a job because if I move back in with my parents, like, that's not the vibe that like I'm going for, Jesus. I mean, you probably lived with your parents your whole life, I guess, because you're Jesus, but like Bethlehem, Georgia is not the same vibe as like whatever Bethlehem you were in. And so we're trying to like, go to Midtown or Buckhead or Charlotte or wherever, Nashville probably, that's hot right now or whatever. Nashville's overrated. But anyways, that might be God. That may be the voice of God telling you, don't go to Nashville. That'd be a cool story later. Anyways, we're spiraling. But Jesus, you're telling us like not to worry, and we're going, Jesus, that's like not practical. Are you saying I shouldn't try? Are you saying I just don't even just study and don't even whatever and don't ever go on dates and whatever's just going to happen? You know what I mean? I'm just going to be at college on this one night. He's going to propose to me. I never met him. He proposed to me. He's incredibly handsome. He looks like Sadie Robertson's husband or whatever. And this is a cool deal, and I love this or whatever. And he offered me a job. I don't even know how that works. So he's like, do I just not try? And he's going, no, like, you don't need to be careless. This is not like an invitation to being careless. I would not advise any one of us to be careless. But what he's saying is you can be carefree. It is possible for college students in Athens, Georgia in 2023 to be incredibly carefree without being careless. So how do you do that? Let's keep reading. He says, is not life, we're talking about life, right? Your whole life. Is not life more than food and the body more than clothes? Because we get kind of dramatic sometimes. And he's going, come on, is not life more than fill in the blank? Whatever the thing that you're got pressure with right now, whatever thing is stressing you out, he's going, if you zoom out, is not your life more than that? Is your life not more than, whether you get into the grad school that you want to get into or not? Isn't like your life bigger than that? Isn't life more than, because we tell us like, my life is over. Right? If it doesn't work out with this girl, again, another girl, doesn't work out with another guy. If I don't get a 98 on my chemistry thing, some of y'all need to chill out with it to the academic, right? But it's like, we tell ourselves, we're like, if I don't, my life, it's against the pressure you grew up with, right? We say my life is over because we zoom in so much that whatever we're stressing about, it looks that big. But he's going, come on, like is not life, like your whole life bigger than that? Verse 26. Look at the birds of the air. They don't sow or reap or store away in barns. In other words, they're not nearly as uptight as you are. They don't plan nearly as much as you do. And yet your heavenly Father feeds them. Are you not much, I love this, not much more valuable than they? When I was prepping for tonight, I got in my feelings a little bit about that. Jesus is going, look, you're valuable. And what do we do with valuable things? We take care of them. And for somebody tonight, the entire reason you're here tonight is to hear me say that you are valuable to God. Apart from anything you could earn or achieve or anything like that. And you're going, why? Like you hear that and somebody hears that and in your spirit you push back and you go, why? And I would tell you, that's a great thing to go meditate on. That's a great thing to go spend time in Matthew 6 and go, man, why am I so valuable to God? But Jesus is going, you are. Let's keep going. Verse 27. Can any of you, I love this, getting a little sarcastic now. I love sassy Jesus, by the way. That's my favorite Jesus, tuxedo t-shirt and sassy. And he says, can any one of you by worrying add a single hour to your life? Or maybe a better question would be, have any of you by worrying taking an hour off your life, perhaps, right? But his point is this, like, does worry actually help? Like, can worry actually buy you a 24th hour in your day to somehow make everything happen for you? He's going, essentially, like, what do you hope happens when you worry? Like I never heard the testimony of somebody go, I just went in my room and I just like worried hard enough and then like, there it was, Or I got out my guitar and I was like, worry you are, and I was just singing songs to worry or whatever, and then just like happened. And Jesus is going, what do you actually hope happens? Can any of you by worrying actually like add something to your life? And he keeps going, verse 28. And why do you worry about clothes? Right, we just sang about this, right? See how the flowers of the field grow. They do not labor or spin, yet I tell you that not even Solomon in all his splendor was dressed like one of these. If that is how God clothes the grass of the field, which is here today and tomorrow is thrown in the fire, will he not much more clothe you, you of little faith? Now, when I was preparing for tonight and studying, I felt like God showed me something, and this is this. Why are they stressed out about clothes? Why are they so uptight about clothes? I would assume if not everyone there was wearing clothes, they would have mentioned that somewhere in the Bible. Right? Thomas was, not wearing clothes. That would have made its way in the Bible. I'm assuming they're all wearing clothes. Why are they worried about clothes? They're worried about clothes because this Jesus guy keeps saying two words: follow me. Follow me. And if I told you guys tonight, guys, we're taking a road trip, what's the first thing you would say? Cool, bro, but I haven't packed yet. I haven't packed it. I don't have clothes yet. And Jesus is going, this is amazing. Jesus is going, look, if you follow me, I'm going to provide what you need. You see it? Because a lot of us have convinced ourselves that if we follow him, it's going to cost us what we need. That's one of your biggest fears when you think about actually surrendering to God and his will for your life and your future and the thing that he's calling you to do, whether it's going somewhere, doing something, ending something, breaking up with someone. It's that fear of like, if I follow God, it's going to cost me what I need. And Jesus is going, no. If you follow me, like you don't need to worry about the clothes and the food and all that. I'm going to provide for you. Following Jesus is not going to cost you what you need. He's going to provide everything that you need. Verse 31. Almost done. So do not worry. This is the 4th out of 5 times he's going to say this in case you're not exactly clear what his main point is yet. He says, so do not worry, saying, what shall I eat? We eat. What shall we drink on this road trip, Jesus? What are we going to wear? For the pagans, love this, for the pagans run after all these things. In other words, that's kind of how the people who don't know God, they don't have faith, think and worry. And I'll tell you, this is a wonderful, weird, unique year in the life of our family. So we're getting ready to build a house here locally. And just bought some land. We're about to build this house, which is really stressful, especially right now. And there have been several times throughout the whole thing, it's like, oh man, that's not what I expected. And boy, I get scared about that. Or well, that's going to cost more than we thought. And what's going on? And honestly, this passage is so convicting for me because I'll say certain things to my wife, the process of things I'm worried about. And she'll even call me out and go, like, where's your faith? Like, you're talking like somebody who doesn't have any faith. And that's what Jesus is going. Jesus is going like, there's a way that the world worries about things that you don't have to. And I think the implication for a lot of us is this, that Christians at UGA, there's a way for you to walk through your college years with way less pressure than everybody else. Not because you're better than anyone, because we're not better than anybody, but because there's something you know. There's something in your heart that you just know. And this is what it is, back half of the verse. Because you know that your heavenly Father knows that you need them. If the question is, does God know what you need in your life right now, in your future and in your family's life and all that? Jesus, who has been with God, says, oh, he knows. We talk all the time. He knows. So, what do you do? Somebody here is like, I'm a doer, I'm a practical person, and this is inspiring, and it's love that. And I want you to know. I want you to know that your future is secure, simply because God cares about you. Like that's the whole point. Loves you, knows what you need, your future is secure. But somebody here is going, what do I do? Because I'm a doer and I'm trying to figure out how to take this pressure down. And Jesus tells us essentially as we're getting near the end of the section, this is what he says in verse 33. This is your part. This is the other option tonight, verse 33. But seek first his kingdom and his righteousness, and all these things, all the things that you're worried about and have pressure about, will be given to you as well. Now, many of us have heard this before, this idea of seeking first his kingdom and his righteousness and everything else will take care of itself. But here's what's interesting to me. What does the world tell you? What's the world's message to you? We already talked about it a little bit. What's the message that you've grown up hearing since you were 3 years old? What the world would tell you is this, that you have to instead look after these things. Your kingdom and your righteousness. That you have to make a name for yourself, ultimately so you'll feel good about yourself. And you got to take care of you, because if you're not looking out for you, man, like who else is going to look out for you? And so you got to build up your brand, your portfolio, and your resume, and you're not on LinkedIn yet. What are you doing? Like you got to take care of your kingdom and your righteousness. I want to say, no wonder you have the pressure that you do when the message that the world is telling you is that you have to build your own kingdom and at the same time somehow satisfy your own righteousness. And you know what? This could be a whole message, or series in of itself. But you know what these are about? This is ultimately about this. It's ultimately about security. Ultimately, the pressure that we feel in the world tells us we have to build up our own kingdom. We got to find our job. We got to make enough money. And so we find somebody that loves us, and we have friends and all that. And then we got to somehow satisfy at the same time our own righteousness, so we feel good about ourselves and have some sort of internal peace and peace with God and a clean conscience. And I want to tell you this. You will never, ever, 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 ever find peace if you're trying to do these two things. It's not possible. It's not possible to be safe or to have peace when you're trying to build your own kingdom and your own righteousness. And here's why. How much is enough? Some of you are like, if I made as much money as my parents made, I would never feel the pressure they do. And I want to say, I don't know if that's true. How good is good enough? That's what's amazing about Christianity, right? It's not about how good you are at all. But if you're trying to just be a good enough person, you can never satisfy that on your own. And the reason many of us don't feel safe is because we are walking around the world trying to provide two things that we can never provide for ourselves. Security from our own kingdom and our own righteousness. And so instead, Jesus gives us the other way, and we already said it. Instead, it's to seek first his kingdom and his righteousness. What does that mean? That means I'm going to focus on his power. Instead, I'm going to focus on his riches. Instead of focusing on my own goodness, I'm going to focus on his goodness. When I get stressed about a house situation and I start focusing on my own riches, not good. My own sort of decision making and good plan, not a good strategy. But instead, when I shift my attention on God's riches, oh yeah, he owns everything. God's power, his sovereignty, his character, his goodness, the way he loves me, his faithfulness to me, not my faith, not whether I deserve it or not, because then I start, well, I don't really deserve it. They deserve more than me do, and God's probably punishing me because I didn't do whatever. And in middle school, I looked at this thing one time. Whatever. We get stressed out about some of these things, so we focus on our own righteousness and whether we're going to be good enough. And the invitation is, no. Pause the world's plan. Take off the pressure and focus on his power, his riches, his control, not control yourself, God's character, his goodness. He loves me. He's faithful even when I'm not. That's the strategy. You seek after those things. Everything else is going to take care of itself. I don't know one person who's seeking first God's kingdom and his righteousness who's not really, really free. And when, we talked about this earlier, but when we worry, everything gets so big. But when you focus on this, it gets really, really small. And so I put in my notes, let worry, anytime you feel the pressure coming, you worry, let worry be a cue to take your eyes off of you. Anytime you feel worry creeping up, you go, you know what I'm doing? I'm seeking first my kingdom again. I'm seeking first my righteousness again. I'm trying to control the whole thing again. Instead, I'm going to let worry be a cue to take my eyes off of me. I'm going to seek first God's kingdom. Oh man, God's in control. God's got a great plan for me. God's righteousness instead. That's the invitation. And then he closes. This is awesome. He says, therefore, do not worry about tomorrow, for tomorrow will worry about itself. Each day has enough trouble of its own. And his point is this, honestly, we're not even that good at, we don't always worry even right. How many things did you worry about a week ago, a month ago, a year ago that ultimately ended up being fine? How much pressure did you carry around in high school over things that ultimately maybe didn't really matter as much as you thought they did? He's going, we're not even that great about worrying. There's other things to worry about in the future. So instead, just live in this moment with me. And the data backs him up. Another book, fantastic, called The Worry Cure, did a deep dive into studying all the things that people worry about and kind of whether they happened or not and all the outcomes. And this is what they said. They studied all these people who worried. And they said it turns out that 85% of what subjects worried about never happened. You believe that? So we spent all this time worrying, stressed out, the pressure, and oh my gosh, he said this is going to happen, they're going to pick me, and whatever. And 85% of it never happened. And with the 15% that actually did happen, oh no, that's going to be terrible. 79% of the subjects discovered either they could handle the difficulty better than expected, or the difficulty taught them a lesson worth learning. That means that 97% of what you will worry over is not much more than a fearful mind. I got one of those, punishing you with exaggerations and misperceptions. You may have heard it said before that worry is a down payment on a problem you may never have.